well, breaking news as of today, February 5th. Did y'all see that Jim Harbaugh's son, I think it's Jim's, Jay, is the Eagles, not the Eagles. I'm thinking, I got to get my birds mixed up. Although the Eagles probably need it too. The special teams coordinator for the Seahawks.
No,
Yeah,
like he just got signed on.
Yeah, that was those of
Like
today.
6 hours ago.
Yep.
yeah, I saw that. They said he was the special teams coordinator for Jim Harbaugh at Michigan for like 5 years or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so he came from Michigan.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure that the Eagle. I don't know why I keep getting my birds mixed up. I'm not sure that the Seahawks have who's their coach, McDonald.
Yeah.
Mike
It's
McDonald.
still absolutely mind blowing to me that there are coaches like Mike Vrabel and Bill Belichick that are on the table that seemingly everybody's just passed over.
Well, that's what I found so shocking is like Washington said that they fired Ron Rivera, and I was expecting them to at least pick up Vrabel.
Yeah.
And then they turned around and on the first they picked up Dan Quinn. I mean, nothing wrong with Dan Quinn, but
Well, hey, they were originally going to go get Ben Johnson, and Ben Johnson told him to kick rocks.
Can you blame
which
him?
I get.
Yeah, I
I
get that too.
I'm all for another team in the East not doing very well. You know, we already got the Cowboys. We already got, the Giants. But, I mean, at the end of the day, Washington is still in the rebuilding phase, and I think they still need to get the right people in the front office first, and then they'll eventually get the players that they need on the field. But I think everybody knew it once they got rid of Chase Young this year that they were like, we're just chalking the season. We'll figure it out, in the draft, and we'll see what happens after that. But
So I mean, I can't understand. Obviously, Harbaugh signed with the Chargers. That's a big pickup for the Chargers. I'm not really sure you could get more worse than Brandon Staley. Obviously, like you said, we saw Dan Quinn go to Washington. Where does Bill? Do they just both take a year off? I mean, where do you think either one of them go?
Oh, yeah. I think they take a year off. I think they're better off taking a year off. I say that only because, like, I think I said it in last episode that you could see there's a lot of jobs that could go up on the line. Like, I highly doubt it's going to happen, but what if Andy Reid decides he wants to retire next year? I don't think he will, but you never know. You got, if the Eagles have a slump year next year, they were already thinking about firing Sirianni at the end of this year. You think they might pull the trigger next year. You got the Cowboys. Yeah, the Cowboys with Mike McCarthy. I mean, he should have been fired 3 years ago when they signed him, but they've kept him around. But yeah, I think they'll be better off. There'll be better jobs available next year than what there will be this year.
Speaking of having better jobs next year, you think not McDaniels. I don't know why I keep getting all my teams mixed up. Steelers head coach.
Mike Tomlin?
Yeah, Mike Tomlin. I knew his name was Mike something. You think he's on the hot seat too if he has another average year?
Nah. I think
they're content with it.
Is he's more on the hot seat than Tom would be.
You think McVay is?
If you're just looking at specifically if Tomlin will go. I mean, dude, 20 years, 19, 20 years being winning seasons.
Oh, yeah, he's never had a losing season.
I think he really is just a couple guys away on the field from
Let's get the facts straight. Let's get the facts straight. There has been a year where he was even, which is not technically a losing season,
not
but
a
winning season.
Doesn't count. It's all about perspective.
20 years, though, and you haven't had one losing season.
Well,
you really
stand for something.
You see a lot of coaches on the hot seat next year. Obviously, I want to say it was expected for the Cowboys to make a move. It was wanted by the fan base for them to make a move this year. But obviously, they've decided to keep it, but they've lost Dan Quinn. I mean, you really think that there are that many coaches that Belichick could step in and Vrabel could step in next year?
I mean, I think you have at least 4 or 5 teams I mean, I can't say I keep up too much with the Cardinals as Jaron does, but I gotta say that his job's out there. Uh, and didn't Antonio Pierce? He no longer the Raiders head coach. Didn't they walk away from him too?
I thought
Like,
they
No, he
signed
did.
him.
He
days ago?
signed. He signed now.
Yeah.
Oh, did
Yeah,
he?
he signed.
What about the Falcons? Who took that head coaching job?
Raheem Morris.
Morris, yeah.
He was
I
the
just-
Rams DC.
Another, we had this conversation last week. I don't understand why you got guys like Belichick or even Eric Bieniemy. You saw what he did in Kansas City with that Chiefs offense. You've seen what he's done with Sam Howell last year. How does he still not have a head coaching opportunity? There is no way that there are 32 better head coaches than Eric Bieniemy.
I mean, I think taking a look at it is a lot of teams want that defensive minded head coach. They want somebody that doesn't necessarily need to call the offense, but when it stands tall, that they're able to do what they need to do on defense to stop them. I mean, for example, look at the Ravens. I mean, they had a phenomenal defense throughout the year, but having somebody that is truly defensive minded in those moments, and Patrick Mahomes is a tough guy to guard. I'm not saying that he's a cakewalk, but at the end of the day, you need to make those coaching adjustments before the game, during the game, and while play to play to be able to stop a guy like him, let alone go and win a Super Bowl too. So
I also do want to point out that Eric Bieniemy is currently unemployed as of looks like 4 hours ago. Washington hired Cliff Kingsbury as their offensive coordinator and fired Eric Bieniemy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's some sort of locker room problem with Eric Bieniemy? I mean, it's kind of hard to argue with the success that he's shown, but
I think that's more of a coach turnover. I think because Dan Quinn got hired, he wants to hire his own OC, and maybe he doesn't like the system that Eric Bieniemy runs.
Yeah, because you got to understand, a lot of times it's not just the team or the GM making those calls; it's also the coaching staff. So you get like Harbaugh comes in and he doesn't like his guys, he's going to clean house. It's just how it is. He doesn't like the schemes. He doesn't like, obviously I got to imagine everybody's, a stand-up guy, but at the end of the day, the head coach is going to come in and want to do things his way because, he's seen success or he's tasted it. An example like Harbaugh, obviously he won the national championship. He's like, let's cross our I's, dots our T's so that way day one, when spring starts and everybody's back from Cabo, we're going to hit the ground running so we can go win a Super Bowl.
Now, speaking on Cliff, are we, now that I don't want to say it was due to Nick Saban retiring, do you think we're going to see that shift more often, pros or the college to pro? I mean, obviously Jim's gone from Michigan. Obviously he coached previously in the NFL, but he's made that jump back to the NFL. Obviously Cliff has come. Do you see that being more of a common occurrence for those star head coaches in college?
I listened to a podcast earlier that kind of talked about that a little bit. I think so because like they were bringing up that like compared to the college game like 10, 15 years ago before NIL, it was college and the pros were such a different game that like nowadays with the NIL, it's kind of the same. Like you see NFL teams running like plays that happened on that Saturday, the previous Saturday, like trick plays that happened on Saturday that, some like LSU used, all of a sudden you'll see the Atlanta Falcons use it. Like, so I think offenses are starting to shift to be more modernized like college. And I think that the shift's just a lot easier now because it's kind of playing the same system with free agency compared to the NIL and the transfer portal. A lot of it is somebody will hit the transfer portal and it's who can outbid the other.
But you don't think that has any issues with, because I'm coming at it with like you said, trick plays happen on Saturday. I still like my coach. Let him just take that play and move on. I think a lot of times it is a different environment. I mean, you have to get guys who just absolutely think differently. Boston College DC. I mean, he clearly won out that race with all those other coaches that, were going for that same position. He clearly thought different to step up to be in that next level. I don't think a lot of coaches have it in college. And I mean, taking a look at Harbaugh, he's been in the league before. He's also played in the league. So he's got that experience, whereas I think some other coaches don't. And I think a lot of guys, at least for the next couple years, in my opinion, are going to be looking at creating that more of a Nick Saban type of environment in their town, because there is, I would argue for a lot of people, there is not that coach anymore. I mean, you can look at Ryan Day. You would have thought Harbaugh before he left, but I mean, at the end of the day, there is still a lot of question marks to see who is going to be that next team for the next 10, 15 years in college. And I gotta imagine that coaches are foaming at the mouth to take a spot. So I think you might see a handful of picks probably go under the radar. Like I mentioned, the DC out of Boston
Awesome.
College, but I just don't think. I think especially with two big names like Belichick and Vrabel going to probably be free agents this year, looking into next year, I think there'll be a lot of moving parts that other teams will take that over picking it up from college. So,
And obviously, people like to go where the money is. So you can't really argue with that. There's a lot more money in the pros than there is in college.
Money talks.
Yeah, what was it? The
Money
Panthers.
talks.
The Panthers signed their head coach to like a 7-year deal or something, or maybe it was the Falcons. One of the two signed their
Did they
coach for like
really?
multi years, and that's crazy to me, especially the environment that they've created. That you are that committed to somebody for that long when you obviously don't know what that's going to turn into. You don't want to be stuck with somebody for 5+ years when they've done nothing but tank your team even further than they were before.
Very
Yeah,
old on
I
that Mizzou.
mean, I think they're putting that tag on them to kind of do that saying of like, burn the boats. Like, we got no other option. We're going with you. So like, I feel like the Panthers are really just showing their all out commitment in hopes that the head coach can build things
something.
back together. Yeah. Put a team together that Carolina will be happy about.
Well, obviously, no ill wishes towards any college program, but there's definitely, or not college program, pro program, but there's definitely going to need a lot of fixing in some programs like the Carolina Panthers or the Atlanta Falcons. Lord, we hope that somebody can use somebody can use Bijan and Kyle Pitts correctly. That might be a god squad if they get a good quarterback. Shifting over to college basketball, obviously, March Madness coming up. I want to get this out of the way. I think March Madness is maybe the second greatest time of the year. I'm not sure. It's
first, Christmas.
The Stanley Cup playoffs.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
Big hockey guy here, but I think March Madness is one of the best sporting times of the year. I mean, I think just I don't want to say randomness, but just the moment that we've seen in recent years, the 16 seed knocking off the 1 seed, just for those guys to have that capability. Obviously we saw a couple years Loyola College have a huge Cinderella run. I think that is just special for not only those players in that college because they make a lot of money off of just making the tournament, but I think that's special for the entire game of basketball. I think it's really cool to see these guys that are, I don't want to say nobodies, but and a broad spectrum of things. You're not gonna remember a Loyola College versus a Duke or a UNC, but I think March Madness is one of the most special times of the year. Obviously, you've got the brackets that you can do, and when March Madness comes up, I have a game on every single TV monitor in my house. I'm just nothing but college basketball for the month, and I think that is a lot of fun.
Well, do we have early predictions?
We
who's gonna
do.
win?
Current odds, obviously, we still have about. Actually, I don't know when the tournament starts. But recording this now in the beginning of February, it is actually the Purdue Boilermakers.
Wow,
that
Purdue.
Yeah, they have that center. I'm forgetting his name.
Zach Edey.
Yes. Purdue is currently at plus 700, and we have the Houston Cougars at 900, UConn at 900. Then we got the Tar Heels and the Volunteers at 1,500. We got Arizona at 16, Auburn at 18, Alabama at 2,000, Kentucky, Duke, and Wisconsin all at 25, and then Kansas has fallen all the way to plus 3,000 odds.
All I'm saying is I'm looking at FanDuel and it says Missouri is plus 50,000 to win the national championship. I'm hammering.
Putting 10 grand
I'm
down.
hammering.
Looked at the days. Selection Sunday is March 17th. First four is March 19th through 20th, and the first round starts March 21st through 22nd.
So obviously we have a bit to go before the actual tournament begins, but I mean, anybody that right now that you're saying, any team that sticks out to you that you're going, this is the team that I want to lock in for March Madness?
I mean,
Go ahead. I was just about to say, I'm just going to pick a team and I'm going to ride the wave. I know Jack Diddley squad.
Are you a
college basketball?
We're doing it.
Are you a stare at the bracket and who has the better mascot kind of person, or how does this happen?
This year I'm just gonna pick a team.
Just picking one team and you're just riding that team out.
We're gonna rock with. Oh God. We're going with Baylor. Baylor's winning it.
Wow.
Plus 4,000 odds on FanDuel. I
mean, okay, that's the great thing. Like I said, I kind of reiterate about college basketball is it literally could be some random team that has, if Mizzou ends up making the tournament, plus 50,000 odds right now. That's just the beauty of college basketball.
You put $10 on Baylor on FanDuel, you get $400, buddy.
I'm about to be a millionaire.
I just want to point out though that UConn almost has double the points Baylor had scored. Yeah. So. Throwing that out there in case you want to rechange before the bracket shows up.
Nope.
Well, hey, what do you think?
The lights are going to be on, and it's going to be game time.
I mean, looking at the two dominant teams right now, you got to say Purdue and UConn. I mean, every other team has lost 4 or more, and I think that's a big thing why Kansas is very low on that spectrum.
Falling way off.
Yeah, some pretty not so good teams. But obviously, you can't leave Kansas out. They're still a very good program. Now sitting at 4th, thanks to that win over Houston the other day. But I mean, with heck of a lot of basketball left to go. I mean, just this weekend, like you saw, Cincinnati beat Texas Tech, and they were 15th. Cincinnati wasn't ranked. Baylor beat Iowa 18-12, and San Diego State won over Utah, and Utah State was 17th. So maybe not. A heavy-hitting program like Tar Heels, Blue Devils, but still won nonetheless. And going back to what Evan said, it's there's still a lot of season left this year before March Madness arrives that we could be talking about a completely different 2 programs up there between UConn and Purdue over the month. But if I had to guess, with my education and only watching about 22, 24 games, I'm going UConn. I think the men's program does it this year. You've seen the women's program be dominant over the last, 5-6 years. Obviously, sidestepped last year, but I think UConn's got it. I think they got the ball handling ability. They got the strength. They got the paint. They are just a very dominant team, and I think they're one that can compete with Purdue and come out top if it happens to be the top.
So I have watched one college basketball game this year, and it was Mizzou versus Illinois, and Illinois won by 30. So
go with Mizzou.
I have absolutely zero clue about college basketball this year. I'm the very casual college basketball fan. I watch when March Madness comes up. I watch when the conference tournaments come up. That's when I'll start kind of like tuning in to see. But if I'm looking based off of odds, and again, I'm on FanDuel Sportsbook right now. If I'm looking based off of best bang for my buck, I want to put like, a quick $10 bet down and see if I can make a whole lot of money. Well, not a whole lot of money, a good amount of money.
I'm riding with Slew. No.
Yeah, no.
St. Peter's.
Chris is gonna love this. I think Alabama.
Wow. The Crimson Tide.
Alabama is plus 1,800 on FanDuel right now. So put 10, get $180. That's pretty penny. Also, they're just SEC basketball is not the end all be all in basketball. Usually the Big Ten is the Big Ten, the ACC. Those are like the basketball conferences. But like just looking straight at odds. I know nothing about college basketball. I'm an idiot. You're smarter. I'm dumber.
He's going basketball, or he's going.
You got in the top 15 of the odds. You have Tennessee, Auburn, Alabama, and you have Kentucky. You have 4 SEC schools in the top 15 of the betting odds. So that tells me that Vegas knows something that we don't, and that they think it's coming out of the SEC this year. Now, mind you, obviously you still have powerhouses like Connor brought up in Purdue and Connecticut, and Purdue has Zach Edey, and when you have a dominant big man like Zach Edey who can do everything all over the floor, that you have a clear advantage. But it's just I have trouble putting a lot of faith in Purdue basketball in March. It's just like they've had years where it's like this is the year for Purdue, and then they'll make the Sweet 16 and lose, or they'll make the Elite 8 and lose, and it's like, I don't know. I think Alabama. I'm so ready to be wrong, and in like 2 weeks when we're recording a podcast, I just say, yeah, Alabama just lost 12 games in a row, but I'm ready for that.
Yeah, and I am pretty sure that Jaron probably thinks that Saban went from coaching basketball or coaching football to basketball, and that's why he's going with Alabama.
Touchdown, Alabama.
I'm gonna ride out Purdue, bro. This is their year. I mean, it's kind of this early. It's kind of like I said before, just kind of a toss up. I mean, even when the tournament really comes out, it is a toss up. Cinderella runs, magical moments. I'm just hoping for a good tournament. Like I said, I think March Madness one of the best times of the year.
It's always a good tournament. Yeah, you don't have to ask that. It just is.
Yeah, I mean, I could see any one of those teams: Purdue, Houston, UConn, North Carolina, Tennessee. I mean, I could even see Kansas getting it back together, making a good run. Speaking of Tennessee, NIL violations. I think we're gonna start seeing this more and more.
Yeah, I think we knew it was coming. I mean, with it kind of being introduced first year of major transfers, honestly, regardless of if you're Nick Saban retiring, a lot of those guys wanting to go to different programs or whatnot. I mean, just some of the deals that these kids are getting. I mean, look at Shador in Colorado. Apparently he paid for his dad's mansion. It's like that's supposed to be professional money. That's the type of money you make on major first round rookie deal that these kids are making in college. So a lot of it is, if you're looking at big names like Caleb Williams, like Shador Sanders, like May, they're going where the money is. They're not necessarily going where schooling is. They're not going where anywhere else is. They want to go where the money is, and I get it. If you can make that kind of money in college, plus whatever you're going to make in the league, by all means, I'm there for it. But you had to have expected that there were going to be colleges throwing different things out that were against the rules. But I think at the same time, the NCAA, it's all new. You know, whether you're talking universities or you're talking the association, a lot of it is new. And where it comes with Tennessee is apparently they have made repeated violations on the NIL deals. But, you know, I read something that Florida and Florida State were also apparently kind of amongst that conversation. But at the end of the day, it's like, it seems like a lot of gray area. And obviously, some schools have a heck of a lot more money than other schools do. And that was the biggest conversation when it came up, whether IL should become a thing to pay players or not. But I think at the end of the day, going to be money around, like Jaron said earlier, money talk. It is what it is. That's how it happens. I mean, Kansas, for example, like our football program hadn't always been good. Their football program still brought in more money than their basketball program had done, like millions than what their basketball program had done. And their basketball sold out every game, regardless if they were playing Kansas State or they were playing Dayton. Just how it was. You know, football is a major sport, but when you get money involved, that whole whole thing why running backs take forever to sign, quarterbacks, you know, do their thing in the league. You can see it then. It's like there's a lot of stipulations that there when you're talking about college. So I feel like college is like, we'll get you a Ferrari if you want it.
Yeah, I think
$5 million.
I think that you're starting to see those public, you know, those violations come out because it's now, and obviously NIL, the recency of it has made things very, very popular. You know, you can publicly now get paid for your name, image, and likeness. Obviously, I think we're kidding ourselves if you don't think that this hasn't happened for, you know, the last.
Buddy, Tennessee used to give. Tennessee was
Yeah.
prominent. This is not their first time paying players illegally.
Archie Manning before was really a huge thing. I heard they spent like $260,000 for a visit for him.
Dude, they would, with their top recruits, they would give them McDonald's bags full of money and be like, "Oh, hey, you want to take some Big Macs for the road?" And it would have like $10,000 in cash. Like, this isn't their first time making a violation when it comes to paying players.
Now, I did see that Tennessee was fighting those. I mean, how do you move forward? Obviously, I think the NCAA is, you know, a bit, I don't want to say, out there is what I'll say. I'm not a lot of, you know, not a lot of organizations make the great calls like the, you know, quote unquote great calls that the NCAA makes. You know, it's obvious we've been fighting for NIL money to be involved for the longest time. But back to what Connor was saying, I think you're seeing it become too much like the pros, where it's now about money instead of about going to school for a future. I mean, where do you go? What's the first step in the process to fix this? Because obviously Tennessee, there is no way that if Tennessee's doing it, that other major football programs, you like Clemson or Alabama, there's no way that this is just a Tennessee thing.
Now, before I get into my way of fixing it, I want to point out that as a former college athlete of the NCAA, not a big athlete. Okay, I went to a Division II school.
A big athlete, just not.
I am a big athlete, not a big name athlete. Going to a Division II school, we didn't have a lot of NIL stuff, but you know, obviously, people who did have NIL, it helped a lot with, you know, just covering basic costs. Like, hey, I need groceries for the week. Well.
He also wants to point out NCAA that there were no Big Mac bags handed to him as he was leaving the university.
No Big Mac bags were handed to me. Okay, I promise.
McDonald's next to us.
No. Nothing crazy. I went there on my own accord.
Don't ask how we afforded a new Ferrari last week. Just
let me just pull out my keys. No, but like. At the Division I level, I think overall as a idea, NIL is awesome because one thing that it does is that it keeps athletes in school. So you don't have as many athletes leaving after, like, for example,
One and
NBA
done.
players. Yeah, one and done NBA players, or like with baseball, simply going to college, just saying, I'm going to the draft because I got drafted in the 40th round by the Chicago Cubs, so I'm going there and I'm going to go play for their low A ball team and play in the minors for 12 years before I even sniff the big leagues. Or in football with 3 years and then leaving. It's keeping them in school to where they're getting their degree so that if they go to the league and they blow their knee out and they can't play anymore, or they get too many concussions and they can't play anymore, they decide, you know what? I made some money in the NFL or the NBA or MLB, whatever. I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm just going to go live my life. I have a degree to back on. But now off my soapbox, what you could do to fix it, it's kind of I don't think it'll ever happen, mind you. But I mean, could you do a salary cap? Like, because you already have in place in the NCAA, how it works is at the Division One FBS level, you have a certain amount of scholarships. You have, like, I think it's 25 full ride scholarships that you can give to players each year. At Division One AA or FCS, you have a certain amount of scholarships, but they can be split into full ride or half ride. And then at Division Two, you have a certain amount of scholarship money that gets allocated to different scholarships. So, like, you could have Joe Schmo from the middle of BFE get a 10% scholarship to random university in the middle of BFE. And then you can have someone that's from Dallas, Texas, who's a huge recruit for a Division II school, and they get a full ride scholarship. It's like, so you have different bases per level, and obviously Division III you don't have athletic money. You have different rules via level, and you already have limitations on what you can do with scholarships. Why can't you have limitations on what you can do with NIL?
Was this kind of an oversight? I mean, obviously, I'm all for college players getting paid, but I mean, I don't think that there should be a 19-year-old that's driving around a Ferrari that's not because he's not talented enough or not this or that. I think his one goal, the reason that you go to college, is for a degree. For, like you said, heaven forbid somebody goes to the league first year, blows out their knee, and can never play football again. They have a degree they can fall back on. And obviously, paying them for what they're worth is great. But I do think that there should be some sort of, I don't want to say cap, because then you're getting really into, like, you're basically just the pros at that point, unless you heavily limitate how much they can make. But I think that there's always going to be loopholes. Like, I'm sure that the $400,000 Lamborghini that a college player gets given does not count towards his NIL deal or something. Obviously, I don't know the specifics, but
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, but I think at the end of the day, like you said, that whether they put a cap on it or not, it is still a different game, legally than it is in pros. Because, like Jaron was talking about, at different levels, there's different money, but at the same time, you could be talking about an Appalachian State. They're not bringing in money like Alabama or Tennessee or, some of those bigger SEC schools, because SEC just does football right. Plain and simple, they do it right. Better than ACC, better than Big Ten, and you can argue that, with Michigan winning, whatever. Traditionally, historically, SEC does it right. But if you put a cap on it, some of these schools still can't get bigger recruits regardless. You want to put a $30 million cap on it. That some schools don't have $30 million to just deal around with. And so, I mean, I think at the end of the day, players are going to play and players are going to continue to go to the big school, and you are just going to have to work your way up to get there. I think there's always going to be a big dog. There's always going to be a little dog. And hopefully there's going to be some, recruit that you can, snatch from them that doesn't want to make the $30 million and he wants to go to a school, not picking on Appalachian
really
State again,
don't
but like
see that
Appalachian
happen.
State. I don't think it will either. I think with bigger name guys, they want money. They want to be able to provide for their family. They want to be able to have the nice things, the expensive. That's just the way it is. Bigger schools can offer that. And so I think NIL, I think with that can being opened, I don't think you can go back. I don't think you can go back and be like, we're not going to pay players anymore. But like you said, the rules have to be a little bit stricter as far as how they like the regulations to happen, how they like funds to be distributed. But we will continue to see this happening for the next couple of years where schools are violating different aspects of the NIL relationship because it's just how it is. Money talks. People want it.
I think
Now,
moral of the story is we need to give Reggie Bush his Heisman Trophy.
Oh,
His
God,
Heisman back.
give him his
100%.
Heisman back.
100%. Which is why I don't know, like, what if we're already paying players Ferraris now? What's the difference?
Money Manziel didn't lose his Heisman after coming out with a documentary talking about how he was signing autographs for money.
Preach.
Like, what are we doing here? Also, piggybacking off of that, like, I don't know how this would really work financially. Like, I don't know how the finances of like a corporation, I'll say, like the NCAA works, because technically they're amateur athletes. Can you do like, so instead of a salary cap, like kind of like what baseball has, where they don't have a cap at all? You could spend as little or as much money as you want. The Oakland A's spend like $20 million to field a team, while the Los Angeles Dodgers
got the Avengers going on over there.
They spent $1 billion this offseason with a B overall. But like, do you see them almost do like a luxury tax? But like also financially, can they do that to a non-profit organization like the NCAA?
Yeah, I don't know that they'll do that, and I think it brings into another question of like extending the playoffs. How much more money are those schools going to get? Schools like Baylor sitting at 11th or 10th can come in and slide, and that could be an extra $3 million that they're just going to allocate to NIL deals next year. I mean, we see how much money the playoffs brings just for college in the 4-man, playoff system. What's another 12 or, even if they implement like the FCS thing where it's 24 teams, how much more money? I mean, that's going to bring in so much more money than what schools are making now. That tactic could ultimately get smaller schools more money, but I don't think football is like basketball where a lot of smaller schools can really win those underdogs over and over and over again. I still think you're going to have those bigger schools winning. They just got bigger guys, faster guys, stronger guys because they got them.
Now, this is very, very early, but kind of to compile everything that we're talking about. Obviously, the bigger schools have more NIL money. Referencing football, they're expanding the college playoffs. Do we see teams like, or I should say team, do we see Alabama falling off? Losing Saban? Losing that, come to Bama, we have Saban factor. How do the playoffs look next year?
Go ahead,
Bama's
Alabama
still...
fan. Talk.
Yeah. Touchdown Alabama?
Oh, man. I think Bama takes a hit this first year. I don't think it's enough to drop them like out of a playoff if it's a 12-man playoff. I think they stay within the top 12. But I don't see them sitting all season in top 5.
So you believe in the Saban factor?
The Saban factor is definitely a thing. That was what he built. And I mean, you saw initially like what Ryan Williams decommitted as soon as Saban retired. And then obviously he went back and committed to Alabama, but that was after he did a visit with this new coach. I think I I'm still upset about it.
I mean, you can
I
kind of
miss Saban.
you can kind of take this further than just Alabama. You see, obviously, Harbaugh go to the Chargers. I mean, what kind of precedent does that set for Michigan? That's like, you know, I this is a bit extreme, but it's like this coach who obviously had a lot of success and built a good program has now, gone or retired to move on to something else. What? I mean, I just don't see like a Michigan or an Alabama being that team next year, just like they were this year.
I don't think they're going to be that team, but I think both teams have that kind of mentality throughout, like across the board, that it's just next man up. I think both teams are going to face different adversities that those bigger name head coaches like Saban and like a Harbaugh, they already had. They had the kinks worked out. They had, the nuts and bolts figured out, all screwed tight on. I don't think we'll see the smoothness kind of happen, like, throughout the season of like, oh, this team is a team that will be top 4, or top 3, top 2. I think they have a little bit more to figure out, but like I said, I think both programs have that next man up mentality, and I think they have both great guys to be able to fill that position. And DeBoer and Michigan's OC now.
Kind of to continue to stir the pot because we have a big Alabama fan here. How does what's his name? I'm trying to think of Washington's the guy that moved.
Kalen DeBoer.
Yes, DeBoer. How does he do at Alabama? I was having this conversation a couple days ago. Not to discredit DeBoer at all. He's coached like Washington and other less.
He's won national championships at NIL.
Yeah, that's not the SEC. That's not taking over Alabama. Now, I understand, obviously. I have nothing against him, and I wish him success. I mean, how does he do taking over? I mean, you have maybe the largest shoes to fill of any coach ever. I mean, outside of Belichick and the Patriots. How does he do it as Alabama's new head coach?
Before you say anything,
Okay.
I just want to say I'm just actually super excited to see how he does and what he does. With the type of offense that he had at Washington, he developed that program very, very well. I'm very curious to see. I'm assuming he's going to keep the same type of schemes, same type of formations, that kind of thing. I really do want to see what some SEC caliber guys can do in that kind of offense. That's all. So go ahead.
I think my biggest concern right now is defense. I mean, Washington's defense. I mean, every game they had, I felt like turned into a shootout. It's just because they couldn't stop anyone, but their offense was also unstoppable. And I think if they can figure that out, and I think with that play style type of offense that DeBoer had at Washington, I think it'd be crazy in the SEC. I think also DeBoer has potential if he's working with Milroe this whole offseason, like starting, obviously not when he got off the plane, but like the next
right
day.
there at the
Yeah.
On the tarmac.
I think he has potential to help Milroe pick up the pieces and like mold him into a better quarterback. And I think that Milroe has potential to be an elite quarterback. And I think it'll be with the help of DeBoer.
He says as he wipes sweat off his brow.
Time will tell.
And
Big
if they can stop
Alabama
anyone.
fan. All right. Kind of transition, we're talking about college basketball, college football. I kind of want to get into some hockey. Obviously, there is a bit left of the season to be played. But, I mean, obviously playoff hockey, kind of March Madness to related. It's a different ball game come playoff time. Is there anybody that stands out right now that goes, this is the team that I'm riding into the playoffs?
Penguins.
The Penguins.
I have no idea.
Well, God, Jesus. There's so many good teams, especially in the West. The West is
Yep.
very like top heavy. I mean, you have Vancouver, Vegas, Edmonton, and then you have Colorado, Dallas, Winnipeg. All of those teams are just phenomenal. I mean, um you have Edmonton who's on like a 16 game winning streak or something like that. And then Vegas defending Stanley Cup champions. You have Vancouver who's I think right now I'm looking at the
They are
standings right now.
33-11.
Yeah, they're on pace
71
to win the
points.
President's Trophy. Yeah.
Yep.
You have Colorado who's Colorado, and then Dallas and Winnipeg who have been very, very strong teams. The West itself is so top heavy and so in like not as much of a degree, but I mean the East is kind of like that as well. With you have Boston, Florida, Tampa, Toronto.
I was
York,
really expecting.
Carolina.
Speaking of New York, I was really expecting them to be. I don't know if it's just troubles recently. 4-5-1 in their last 10 games is not what I would have expected from a team that caliber. I mean, obviously, you kind of saw.
Me too.
You hoped that last year was their year, getting Tarasenko kind of going all in, but that obviously was short lived. But I don't know, like you said, I think it's. I don't want to say top heavy is probably the best word to use, but I mean there are a lot, and I mean a lot of good teams that come playoff time could be insane. I kind of want to go over here. Here's a playoff bracket. I kind of want to get some predictions here. If the playoffs were to go on right now, we got the Bruins here in the East. We got Bruins, Red Wings, Panthers, Lightning, Hurricane, Flyers, Rangers, Maple Leafs.
You got a question or?
The Canes are winning the Stanley
You're just
Cup
going
this year.
straight to Canes.
Wow.
That's a chicken play.
A horrible chicken place, might I add.
Wow.
That's going on TikTok, and
Yeah, that is
there
definitely
comes
100%
all the
getting
hate
clipped.
comments.
Clipped. I mean, I like Boston.
Even though
Boston.
with their absolute breakdown that we saw last year.
Hey,
Yes,
all I want to point out is that in 2019, the Tampa Bay Lightning went into a playoff series to play against the Columbus Blue Jackets, and they got swept. The next year, call it Mickey Mouse, I don't care. The next year, they went and won the cup. And then the year after that, they went and won a cup. And the year after that, they went to a cup. I think that Boston, though they did lose Bergeron, I think they're still a powerhouse. And I think if anybody were to come out of the East, it would be Boston.
Who comes out of the West?
I'm trying to make beliefs.
That's a harder question. The Toronto Maple.
Not out of the West, but I appreciate your admiration. Maple Leafs
The
will probably
enthusiasm.
they'll probably get to the cup, sometime in the next 100 years. But
At some point.
who comes out of the West? Bruins, you said come out of the East. I want to hear your predictions. Obviously, Canucks have been absolutely insane. Vegas is still Vegas. The Avs are still the Avs. I mean, I want to hear your prediction.
All I'm going to say is that back in January of 2019, the St. Louis Blues were in last place, and they
Back
fired their
again.
head coach, and they got depth of scoring. And right now, the St. Louis Blues are in a wild card spot.
Yes.
They fired their head coach when they were towards the bottom of the standings, and now they're getting depth of scoring.
6-3-1 in your last 10 games.
They're getting bounced in the first round. Honestly, I could see Edmonton as that would be my dark horse. Just I say dark horse as they're on a 16-game winning streak, but considering their struggles early in the year where they were, terrible, if they could keep how they're playing, I have no doubt that they can roll into the playoffs and just they would play what you said, Vegas first?
Let's see. I just had it pulled up.
If it,
Yes,
I'm
they would
looking
play
at it,
Vegas.
yes,
Yep.
it would be Vegas. So, I mean, if they knock off the defending Stanley Cup champion, that's a lot of momentum to carry into
True.
through the playoffs. They would probably end up having to play Vancouver because currently it'd be Vancouver and St. Louis, and
Blues in 7, baby. Let's go.
you have a
In
lot
double
more
OT.
enthusiasm than I do. Yeah, I mean, my prediction, way too early prediction, would be Boston versus Edmonton.
I think I could see the Oilers and McJesus go on a 37-game win streak to end the season.
I would love to see the Oilers in the cup. I want McDavid to
Dude,
get a ring.
I had this
so
conversation a couple
bad.
days ago. I don't
Me
think
too.
Connor McDavid wins a ring at Edmonton.
No.
No.
think so
If they
either.
don't do it this year, he won't get it at all. At least not in Edmonton. He'll have to go somewhere
Which
else.
is, is crazy because Connor McDavid's arguably the greatest NHL
Jack
player
Eichel
of all
got
time.
one.
And
Jack Eichel got one, and he left Buffalo.
true.
Crazy.
You don't see many goats or respective goats in their sport walk away without a title. Obviously, Brady has 7. Jordan has 6.
I also want to bring up, since we brought up the playoffs, I want to bring up this question that, speaking of GOATs, Sidney Crosby brought up. I don't know if any of you guys saw this, talking about the playoff format for the NHL, how he wants it to go back to the 1-8 scenario instead of the 3 from the Central, 3 from the Pacific, and the 2 wild card. What are your thoughts on that?
Anybody?
No.
You say no? Just straight, just like
Nah.
that? Just no?
You don't want it back?
Nah.
Why not? What's your reasoning behind?
Why do we gotta do all this changing stuff? I don't know. I don't really have an opinion. I just don't want it to change.
He said the Blues have a better odd if we stick it the way we do.
Buddy, regardless, we're still playing Vancouver.
I don't
I
think...
mean,
Go ahead, Jaren.
I was just gonna say, I personally would much rather have the 1-8 because it's just that's how it was. So you don't want change, Chris. That was the change. They changed it on us. It used to be 1-8.
Yeah,
and then they
we don't
switched
need to
it.
go back.
Yeah, bring it back. It's so much easier. I can look at a standings and just go 1-8. Like right now, if we went 1-8, right now it would be Boston and Philly, Florida and Detroit, New York Rangers, Toronto, Carolina, Tampa Bay, and in the West it would be Canucks, Blues, Kings, Avs, Stars, Oilers, Jets, Knights.
I'm still hearing the Blues in 7.
I mean,
Sounds like an
maybe in a
absolute
one-
snooze fest.
maybe-
Googly moogly.
maybe in a 1-8.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I would much rather have a 1-8. I think you see that kind of across every other major sports. I can't speak for baseball, don't know, or the NBA, but obviously you see in football, high seed versus low seed. You move on, you win, you're in. You lose, you're gone.
To Cabo.
Yeah, off to Cabo with the Eagles.
1, 2, 3, Cancun.
Well, they'll be next year as well.
Man.
Maybe they can meet up with Saban.
While they're there, they got a buy one get one free deal, so they already got their
They
stuff
reserve
set up
tickets for the
next year.
Cowboys as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They reserved a spot for the East. Just everybody.
yeah.
Transition into one more sport. FIFA. Did we see where FIFA's coming? I believe it's 26.
Oh,
MetLife Stadium.
oh my gosh.
Do we?
The baseball stadium?
No, the football stadium.
Football stadium.
Oh.
The Giants and Jets football stadium.
Oh yeah.
FIFA is required. They
Mets?
require the stadiums to be natural grass. Do we see that as a permanent change? Obviously, I don't know the full science behind it. Players have been calling for natural grass
It's
for the
way
longest
cost
time.
effective for
But-
owners to
yes.
keep turf. That's why they keep it.
But they are going to need to change it because that's FIFA rules. Do we see that finally being the breaking point and them saying, we'll just keep grass the entire year. Because obviously, when that came out, Twitter, or X, I should say, was just going crazy with the ACLs tearing and all of the horrific injuries that have happened at MetLife Stadium. I mean, does it need to be changed? And if so, is that the tipping point of the future?
I don't think it's the tipping point of the future. Will MetLife itself keep it? That's debatable just because there's also 2 teams that play on it. So, I mean, that's definitely a lot of upkeep that you got to think about. But no, I don't think that's a tipping point. I think there'll still be that argument 20 years down the road. So,
from my as my athletic training student, brain turns on here. Turf, as Connor said, it is a lot more cost effective, and that is 110% the reason why the owners still have, those owners still have them, because they don't have to pay as many people to keep the turf or the grass up. They don't have to pay for all the seed, the sodding, all of that for it. But the traction of turf and how, with cleats, it gets stuck easier on turf. It is a tad bit of a injury risk. Now, there's not a lot of, believe it or not, there's not a lot of research saying, yes, this causes more injuries and blah, blah, blah. But the most recent research says, yes, it does, but also, I think that it could be the tipping point, only because I could see the Roger Goodell looking at it and going, you know what, maybe it's best for our sport to do this, and kind of almost forcing the owners to do it. Because
I think you kind of open up the possibility of, obviously FIFA wouldn't be back anytime soon, but you open the possibility of getting major, obviously, FIFA only, or the World Cup only comes around every so often, but you get possibilities of hosting major events at stadiums like that.
Other events.
Yeah. Outside of just the World Cup. I'm going through the list of where the FIFA World Cup is, and it is, incredibly interesting that MetLife Stadium was hosted. You got, Canada games in Toronto and Vancouver. Mexico, you got Mexico City. Even the U.S., you got Boston, Dallas, Philly, yeah. And where New Jersey comes into that, I'm not sure. But, I saw a tweet that was all the pictures of all these beautiful locations, and then there's MetLife Stadium in the middle of a parking lot in the middle of New York, New Jersey. So, well, gentlemen, that kind of wraps us up. I appreciate you all spending some time with me. Any closing remarks about anything talked today?
All I know is in my 15 years of football, the one serious injury I had was tearing my meniscus, and that was on a grass field. It had nothing to do with the potholes in that field.
And you heard it here first. Grass is not good, and we need to go back to turf.
Yeah.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.